Hello and welcome to this section of the series. Before we dive into creating tables, I would like us to understand a very important concept, which is data types. This is very essential in order to create effective tables in PostgreSQL. So, what is a data type? A data type defines the kind of data a column in a database can store. So you can think of it like a guide which tells the PostgreSQL what kind of value is allowed in a column. So this value can be a number, text, date. It can also be Boolean value like true or false or anything else. So what a data type does is it tells the PostgreSQL what kind of value to allow in a table column. So if the data type of a certain column is specified as text, then numbers should not be allowed. And if the data type is specified as a number, then a text should not be allowed. So now let's try to see the basic kind of data types which are going to be very useful for us. The first data type which we are going to be looking at is small int. So small int is an integer data type. So it takes 2 bytes of memory. So it is mainly used for small range of whole numbers. So these whole numbers can range from negative 32,768 to positive 32,767. So if you're dealing with a small range of numbers like age, rating, stock count, status code, it is advisable to use small int so to save memory, because it will be very difficult for an age to go up, for users age to go above, let's say 100 years, and also it's very difficult for ratings to go above a certain value, let's say 1,000. Stock counts, status codes are mainly within the range of 100. So in such use cases, it is very necessary to use something like small int so as to be more efficient. Next data type, which is the integer data type. So just like the small int, the integer data type is also a whole number, and it takes 4 bytes of memory, which simply means it is quite larger than the small int. So the range of the integer, it ranges from negative 2,147,483,648 to positive 2,147,483,647. So as you can see, it is quite larger than small int. So what are some of the use cases of this? Well, integers can be used as a form of user IDs. It can also be used like other numbers. Let's say you have a restaurant app and you're trying to generate other numbers. You can easily use an integer since it covers a wide range of numbers. And also you can use this for user ID. You can also use it for counters and foreign keys as well. For example, you can have a user ID of 105, so you can use that as you can use an integer as a type for that field. The next data type which we are going to be looking at is BIGINT. As you can see by the name, it is also an integer, which means it stores whole numbers, and this whole number is quite large because it takes 8 bytes of memory, and it is used for large numerical values. So it ranges from negative 9 trillion to positive 9 trillion. So you can see it is very large. An example can be to count views. So along the line, a YouTube video over, let's say, 15 years can accumulate billions of views. So in such a case, BIGINT is actually a good option to store such values, which is larger than for a normal integer data type to handle. Maybe with time, if our video also gets to 1 trillion, then we can use the BIGINT. Alright, let's continue. So for the BIGINT, the examples we have view count, financial transaction, blockchain data, and also for large scale user IDs like Twitter's Snowflake's ID. So these are the use cases for the BIGINT data type. The next data type we are going to be talking about is VARCHAR. VARCHAR is used when we expect a small sequence of characters which we have a limit to. So the VARCHAR length can range from 1 character up to 255 characters. So it is a very important use case for things like username, which will hardly be up to 255 characters, as well as emails, which will hardly be up to 255 characters. So you typically use the VARCHAR when you know the number of characters, when you know that the number of characters of a certain field will hardly exceed 255 characters, such as username. You can also use it for this like first name. Also here we have an example, first name. We are limiting it to 20 characters, and you can see that even a name like Charlie can easily be handled by this field. So basically a VARCHAR is used when you know that the number of characters in that sequence or in that word will hardly be more than 255 characters. So VARCHAR becomes a very reliable use case in such a scenario. So you use VARCHAR for situations like usernames, emails, phone numbers, and short identifiers with which you know their maximum length. The next data type which we are going to be talking about is text. So unlike the VARCHAR, which has just a limited range of 255 characters, a text is without limit. So this is ideal for paragraphs, descriptions, and other things. So a text can get up to 1 GB, which is practically unlimited. We know 1 GB is limited, but for what we want to put into that column, maybe a post, a blog post, or maybe a bio or a paragraph related to some technical writing, 1 GB feels like unlimited in such a scenario. So an example will be like if you want to, in an app, you want to store the user's bio. An example will be to use a text, because again, you don't know the maximum number of characters which the user is going to write as his bio. So it is good to use a text. So even if they use 5,000 characters for their bio, the text will still be able to handle that. So it is mainly used for things like blog content, comment, description, messages, bios. Text can handle all of that. Now the next data type which we are going to be talking about is the Boolean data type. The Boolean data type simply takes in either true or false. In the case where you don't specify any condition, then null will be the default value. But when we talk about Boolean, in most cases we talk about true or false. So it ranges true or false or null in case you don't include any value. For example, let's say in a website you're trying to see if the user is active. So this is a typical Boolean. So it can either be true to show that the user is active, or false to show that the user is not active. So examples, it is used for things like checking if the user is active, checking if articles are published, or if a user has access, either true to show that the user has access, or false, the user has no access, to also check if like emails are verified, true if the email is verified, and false if the email is not verified. Now the next data type which we are going to be talking about is the ENUM data type. This is also a very important data type. So basically, an ENUM is a custom data type that restricts a column to a fixed set of string values. So it restricts the column to a fixed set of string values. For example, here we can have an example of a set of ENUM, that's a set of string values like draft, publish, or archive. Like if you are having a blogging platform where you have to keep track on posts, then you can have 3 options. Either the post is in the draft, or it has been published, or it has been archived. So for example, you can also use an ENUM for something as user roles. So either the user can be an admin, a normal user, or the super admin. Another example, you have like in a restaurant you have order status. So for the order status, that's also an example of an enum, because the status of the order can either be ordered in case the user is just on ordering, dispatch in case the order it's on its way, and delivered in case the order has been delivered. So enum is very great for values with limited fields like user roles, either admin, user, or super admin, order status, which can be ordered, dispatched, or delivered, and also it can be used for post status or subscription tier, basic, gold, or higher tier, or super gold, custom. So enum is very important when you're dealing with a restricted number of string values, so you can easily be able to control which value should be expected in that column based on the list of values which you want. So no other value out of these values can be in that column. So if an enum, like for example here in this user role, if an enum is expecting admin, user, or super admin, no other value can be put into that column except for one of these three values. The next which we are going to be talking about, which is actually very important, is the timestamp. So what the timestamp basically does is it stores date and time down to microseconds, which means it is actually very efficient. So the date can range from 4713 BC to 294,276 AD. So this is an example of a timestamp. So it has the date 2025-07-22, and it has the time as well as the seconds point, that which shows the microseconds. So the timestamp is very useful when you're trying to keep track of things like the dates when something was created, the date when something was updated, the date when you publish an article, or the date of an event, or you're keeping track of system logs. The timestamp is very important in such situations. This right here is a summary of all the data types which we spoke about in this video. As you can see, we spoke about small int, integer, big int, varchar, text, boolean, enum, and timestamp. So now that we are going to be dealing with table creation, we are going to learn how we can effectively use these data types to make our table creation process more easier. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video where we actually get into creating tables in PostgreSQL.